Today is Saturday, April 24th, 2021. It's approximately 8:01 p.m. This is the interviewer, Christopher Mallett, speaking, student in Professor Daniel Simon's History 1113 course at Baton Rouge Community College. Joining me today is Mr. Brian May, and we're conducting this interview in his residence. His date of birth is June 28th, 1984, and he resides in Zachary, Louisiana. Also present is Mr. Bobby Hill Jr., who is filming the interview. Mr. May and I are longtime friends of many years. Brian, thank you for participating in the Veterans Oral History Project. Would you state for the record your branch of service?
United States Air Force,
What is your current rank?
Master Sergeant.
Tell me the story of how you arrived to military service. What motivated that for you?
So when I got to high school, they had Air Force Junior ROTC, and I decided to join that instead of taking gym. Not because I didn't like gym, I love gym. I had the idea in my head that, these guys wear uniforms. I'm thinking, hey, I'd like to do that. I'd like to wear a uniform. So I joined Air Force Junior ROTC. Getting towards the end of high school career, started thinking about college and, what path to take. I'm thinking, well, maybe I can join the military and that would pay for college. Fortunately for me, I ended up getting an Air Force ROTC scholarship. So I decided to go to LSU on a ROTC scholarship. From there, I ended up losing the scholarship. I stuck with ROTC because by that point, say, probably early on, first semester freshman year, I decided this is what I want to do. I wanted to be in the Air Force. I want to fly planes. So I lost my scholarship. I stuck it out. I finished ROTC. Unfortunately, I didn't graduate on time, so I got called to active duty, and that's how I ended up enlisted. So I did my 2 years active duty, and as they say, the rest is history, right?
Okay, so I was gonna ask why the Air Force, but it sounds pretty clear, at least from what you're saying, that you wanted to fly.
No, it's always been Air Force, basically because of Air Force Junior ROTC. I'd imagine if it was Army or Navy or Marine Corps Junior ROTC, I would probably have gone into that relevant branch.
Okay. Do you recall your first days in service?
It depends on what is considered my first days in service. Because I was in ROTC at LSU, my initial enlistment was while I was still in school. So that would have been September 1st, 2004. That was technically it was the start of my junior year. So I was still in school, still in ROTC. I finished field training with ROTC. That's about the time that you usually enlist or sign your first contract. That's one part of it. But when I got disenrolled from Air Force ROTC and called to active duty, that's when I went active service. That was September 5th, 2007. And that's when I went to basic training. And if you ask anyone who has served, if they remember their first few days in basic training or boot camp, the answer is a definitive yes.
What were those first days in, I guess, the latter part of what you were talking about, like?
Well, I was lucky. It was easy for me considering I did the field training, as I mentioned before. I was 23 at the time, so I was a couple of years older than most of these kids. A lot of them come right out of high school and join the military. So there's a lot of yelling and everything. You got to stand on certain spots and all this stuff. By that point, I've basically been wearing a uniform for 8 years. So I knew what I was doing. all you have to do is do what you're told, really. So it was easy for me, but I guess it's a little entertaining seeing the other young guys going through it, you know. I don't know what else to say about that.
So that my next question was going to be, tell me about your basic training experience overall. With that,
It'll play into exactly what I just mentioned. Because I was in Air Force Junior ROTC, Air Force ROTC, it made everything for me so easy. I didn't learn a single thing in basic training. I mean, I basically taught some of these younger guys that were there. I was basically an expert at drill and ceremonies, you know, and there's some guys I remember, I tried to tell them what they were supposed to be doing, but they didn't want to listen to me. Silly fools, you know. At the end of basic, or towards the end of basic, you take a big test you have to pass in order to pass basic training. I scored the high, well, obviously I scored the highest in my flight, and they had one guy that ended up failing, and the TI, the drill instructor, had me tutor that guy because I scored the highest. And I mean, I ended up getting honor graduate because, I mean, there was nothing new to me. I was really essentially expert at everything that we were doing. So it was, basic training was easy for me, to put it simply, you know.
nice. Do you remember any of your instructors?
I do. I had a female military training instructor. She was probably about my age, if not even younger. I remember that. Staff Sergeant Jenkins. We were actually her very first flight as a training instructor. And the way it works in the Air Force, they have like brother and sister flights. So I don't know how it is now, but at least the way it was before, all males and females are separated, right? So we had our flight of males, which is about 60 or so trainees. Staff Sergeant Jenkins was our military training instructor, and our sister flight, same thing, you know, same number of folks. Technical Sergeant Rudolph was his name. He was a cocky dude. I remember that. But actually, they were both security forces. And if you know anything about the Air Force, you experience anything within the Air Force, you know that security forces are cocky. So they were both pretty high on themselves. So that really wasn't surprising, I guess. But I remember that. And actually, surprisingly to me, a lot of the folks that we interacted with, as far as the instructors go, were security forces. And it's surprising to me because, generally speaking, security forces has one of the lowest required ASVAB scores in the Air Force.
Oh wow.
So they're not the brightest bunch. Yeah, it's interesting.
That is interesting. So, I was going to ask how you got through basic training. That was one of my questions, but you did well.
It was a breeze.
Yeah.
I feel bad for all those other young guys.
Right. But it sounds like you tried to help a lot, so.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I tried. I took a few young guys under my wing, you know, and guided them along the way.
Yeah. Where, as in physical locations, do you perform your service now?
Now, as a reservist, my unit is at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Have you previously deployed?
Yes.
Where exactly did you go during your deployment?
My deployment was at Al-Dhafra Air Base, United Arab Emirates.
Okay. In which war did you serve with that deployment?
Well, the deployment was just a couple of years ago, so we were still supporting operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, mostly Syria. At the time, we were still wrapping up the offensives against ISIS. We supported about 4 named operations. I can't tell you what those names are, but I will say that while we were there, we officially defeated ISIS, and we were a part of that win, basically.
Thank you and congratulations. Do you remember arriving and what that was like?
Yes, I do remember arriving. We got there October 6th, in the middle of the desert. It's about 106 degrees, stepping off that airplane, and the heat just smacking you in the face. Coming off the plane, they had all the main leadership of the base there in the procession, shaking your hand as you call. That was pretty cool. The first guy you there stepping off the airplane is a 1-star general shaking your hand. That was pretty awesome. Other than that, I remember just everything went so fast. It's a new place, you don't know what you're doing, and you're being ushered here and there. You're going through a in-processing line and all this other stuff. And I know personally, I was a master sergeant at the time, and with my particular career field, usually there may be 1 or 2 master sergeants in the shop. Well, with the shop I was going into, we had like 4 or 5, so I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what job I was doing or what responsibilities I would have. So I had a lot of anxiety, and that's new, or was new, and it was uncomfortable.
What was your job or assignment on the deployment?
So my career field is vehicle management, which basically entails maintaining the vehicles, and depending where you are, you may have a certain number of lease vehicles. So we had a contract with a off-base leasing agency, basically, to where we leased like 300 vehicles, something like that. A lot. I really shouldn't be saying that, actually, but it's a ballpark figure, so it's fine.
Okay.
So that's what vehicle management is. We manage the vehicles that are assigned to the base, maintenance and the lease.
Kind of like a fleet management type of thing.
That's really what it is.
Okay.
So in vehicle management, you have actual maintenance, vehicle maintenance, and we have fleet management.
Okay.
That's the 2 parts of vehicle management. My Air Force specialty is vehicle maintenance, and as a master sergeant, I was in charge of the maintenance aspect. So like I said, we had a bunch of master sergeants there. Generally in vehicle management, you have a flight chief and a superintendent. Those are the 2 that are on top of the flight. I wasn't one of those. I was directly under that. So I was in charge of the maintenance side. We had another master sergeant that was in charge of the fleet management side. So basically, I was in charge of all the mechanics. And that was my job.
Okay. Sounds like a big job.
It's a big job. I was very fortunate. I feel very lucky that I had a lot of good, experienced mechanics as NCOs in my shops.
Were there any casualties in your unit? Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped a question. Did you see combat during your deployment?
I did not see combat. We were strictly a support unit.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that there were no casualties in your unit.
No.
Okay. In terms of the whole deployment experience, please tell me some of your most noteworthy experiences.
The one that really sticks out So like I said, we were vehicle maintenance, vehicle management. There was one time that a SEAL team came to us wanting us to help them fix a vehicle. So apparently this particular vehicle that they had was down for like a year. So they needed help, and the United States Navy SEALs came to our unit to help them. And we ended up replacing an engine on their Humvee to get them back into the fight.
The Navy SEALs?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't recall, and I probably shouldn't say either anyway,
Right.
which SEAL team it was, because there's like 10 or 12 SEAL teams.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a Navy SEAL team that
That's awesome.
needed our help.
Cool. While you were there, how did you stay in touch with family and friends?
So being in the Air Force, and this being an air base, we get treated better than any other branch in the United States military. So we had Wi-Fi throughout the entire base. So using Wi-Fi, and my wife and I both having iPhones, we could FaceTime every single day. So the time difference was about, was it 8 or 9 hours? I think it was 9 or 10 actually, because I was there during daylight savings. So it was 9/10 hour difference. So when I would wake up to get my day started, they would be going to bed. So we would FaceTime every single day at that time when I wake up and they're getting down for bed. So that's how we stayed in touch.
That must have been nice.
Extremely convenient.
Yeah, you didn't have to wait for letters.
No, that's how it was in basic training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
Yes. So, well, sort of. It depends. Depends on how you look at it.
There's some caveats
So-
there.
My particular job, I was a supervisor, so I didn't really do any hands-on work. So the only supplies I needed was a pen and a notepad.
Okay.
And we had enough of that. But my guys, the mechanics, it's yes or no. Like we keep certain things on bench stock is what we call it. So there's some things that we always have on hand, like filters and oil and stuff like that. But if a particular vehicle breaks down and it needs a specific part, we have to order it through a contract agency. And of course, being overseas and everything, it takes time to ship and all that. So generally it took like 3 weeks for us to get parts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been frustrating sometimes.
Oh, it's absolutely frustrating, especially if it's a vehicle that can't run. So we have certain standards, like if there's something a vehicle needs but it can still perform its job at the same time as needing that part, we send it back out. We order the part and we send it back out into duty, in service.
Mm-hmm.
And when the part comes in, we call it back in, we replace it. All good, it's not that big a deal. But there are some vehicles, if it was like a catastrophic failure or something like that, we'd have to put it down.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have a specific area where we go send vehicles that were down for parts. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
We had vehicles that were down for months. Like I remember leaving, we still had vehicles there that were down when I got there. It was so bad.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Kind of tying into that, or piggybacking off of that rather, explain what your stress level was like during deployment, but not just related to your job duties, I suppose overall.
So, like I had mentioned earlier, when I first got there, I had a really high level of anxiety. I usually handle stress very well. So that was not necessarily new, but that's something I hadn't felt in a long time. I was stressed out, I couldn't sleep, long 19-hour plane ride there. I had a crappy mattress when I got there, so I didn't get decent sleep for days when I first got there. So it was I was in a bad place, really. It sucked. It really sucked. That's the worst I had felt in a long, long time. But once I got acclimated, I was able to change my mattress out. I was able to get some sleep. I learned what my job was. After that, it was smooth sailing. You know, I adjust well. I'm a fast learner, so from that point on, it was any other job. I mean, I didn't get to see my family in person, but you know, having that Wi-Fi and a FaceTime, that really helps so much. If I was in some type of forward operating base where we didn't have that, that would suck. But luckily, I was where I was, and it was a huge plus.
Good. That those first few days sound like they were rough, but I'm glad it turned around for you.
First world problems, really.
Yeah. How did people entertain themselves during deployment?
So, the base I was at, again, I was so lucky for being there. It's a very cush deployment. So they have a bar on base.
Oh.
We're allowed three drinks a day. Depending on what they have a long list of beers, really good beers too. Foreign beers, really nice, and liquors, wine, very nice. Pool tables, ping pong tables. They had a theater there on base. Now, shows were limited, but I was able to see a couple of movies that I hadn't seen before, so that was a big plus.
Yeah.
And that particular base, if you had your passport and visa, you were allowed to travel off base, which is not necessarily unique, but not every place is like that overseas.
Oh.
So a lot of folks would travel to Abu Dhabi, go to the mall, you know, eat out, see a movie. Some folks went to Dubai,
Yeah.
which is awesome. Again, they have huge malls over there, tallest building in the world.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to entertain yourself with at that place.
Sounds fun.
Oh, they also had intramural sports.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I think they were wrapping up a flag football league. Shortly after that, they started another flag football league, which I played. And then they had a basketball league. I did not play basketball. And then they had a softball league, which I played, and we won a championship.
Wow. Impressive. Were there any entertainers? Like USO?
They had USO shows now and then. The first one I remember, I think, was on Thanksgiving, because I was there from October to April. Who was there for Thanksgiving? Blackstreet.
Oh, okay.
That was the biggest name that was there the entire time. I guess, yeah. To me, that was the biggest name that was there the entire time. We had some cover bands show up. For New Year's, they had, what was that guy's name? He was one half of, I can't remember the name of it. Obviously not that big. But it was entertaining. It was basically a DJ.
Oh, okay.
But it was a good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had USO shows.
Good. Did y'all have leave while you were there? And if so, what did you do?
So we earned leave while we were there. In order to take leave, it would require special circumstances. So in general, no, we don't take leave. But depending on which shop you work at or which unit you're with, that determines your work schedule, right? So for us in vehicle management, we work 6 days a week. So we were able to have 1 day off a week.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned earlier, if you had your passport and visa, you were able to leave base. So a lot of times those folks that had those on their day off, they would go out in the town or, visit Dubai or whatever.
Okay. Okay. And do you have any pictures from your deployment?
I have a bunch of pictures.
Okay.
Mostly from Dubai.
Okay.
While we were there, we were allowed to take pictures, but we weren't allowed to post like on social media and stuff.
Right. Are you able to share those pictures? Not necessarily this moment, but
now, yeah.
Okay. What did you think of your fellow airmen and the officers?
Let's see. In our unit, in the Air Force, a basic unit is really a squadron, right? So I keep talking about vehicle management. That's our flight, but we don't have any officers in our flight.
Okay.
But in the squadron, we had a squadron commander who was a lieutenant colonel. We had an ops officer who was a captain. Actually, that's the only officers we had while we were over there.
Oh wow! I just assumed there were more.
Usually there are more. There's more in my squadron right now in the reserves.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a little different.
Yeah.
But while we were there, my flight, I got along with everybody.
I assumed.
It's a fair assumption. But apparently, I think I'm really the only one that got along with everyone.
Oh.
Because because I got along with everyone, I got to hear the little bit of shop gossip and everything through the different folks. The vast majority of folks that I worked with, I think very highly of. There were some folks that were like, kind of a d-bag,
Yeah.
But I'm sure that happens really no matter where you go, especially in the military, because it happens.
Some characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the two officers we had, I actually knew our commander because she was the commander of the active duty unit at Keesler. So I knew her beforehand that we got there. So we
That
were
was
cool.
nice.
Yeah. And the captain, so we had one captain there for half the time, and she left because the officer positions are basically a permanent duty station. It's not like a deployment, which is a little odd. They actually got to take leave because it's a permanent duty station.
Mm-hmm.
But they were there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And halfway through our deployment, our ops officer left, PCS'd out, and we got a new ops officer. I liked them both. I thought they were both pretty decent officers, and we got along.
That's good.
But I get along with pretty much everybody. So
Very good. During your service to this point, have you been awarded any citations or commendations, or likewise? If so, can you describe those for me?
So there are certain times where you automatically get awarded a medal. So like for us, finishing basic training, you automatically get the National Defense Medal and the Global War on Terrorism Medal.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you deploy, there are also a couple other medals you automatically get, like an Expeditionary something rather medal, and there's another one. And then there are specific locations where you get specific medals as well. So I think like Iraq and Afghanistan, those are places where if you go there, you serve the requisite amount of time, which is like 90 days, something like that, you get that particular medal.
Okay.
Back in the day, if you went to Vietnam, you got
A medal
a
for
certain
them.
Vietnam medal.
Okay.
Besides that, up to this point, I've received an Army Achievement Medal, 2 Air Force Achievement Medals, and a Meritorious Service Medal. I got the Army Achievement Medal while I was deployed because we helped the Army fix some of their stuff. My 2 Air Force Achievement Medals I got a while back. One was from when I was on active duty, another was from some completely different, so a whole nother story. And my meritorious service medal is from my deployment.
Nice. So, explain your somewhat double career in both the civilian and military sectors. To clarify that question, what do you do for work in your civilian life, and where did you go to school? Because you mentioned already that you did attend college.
Yes, so my civilian career, I'm a civil engineer. I work for the Louisiana Department of Transportation. I went to LSU. As I mentioned before, I went to LSU, called the active duty. I did my 2 years active duty, and I went back and finished my degree. Finished my degree in civil engineering. A month later, got my job at DOTD. Having those two jobs, basically, a civilian job and a military job, it can be difficult. I guess it depends. If you are single, it would be nothing. You know, you go do your 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, no big deal. Having a family, it makes it a little more difficult being away from the wife and kids 1 weekend out of the month. Even though it's only 1 weekend in a month, that time is strained, you know. I do a lot around here in the house, you know, and being away 2 whole days, that could be tough on the kids and the wife, you know.
Yeah.
I say that, but really it's more tough on me when I get home and see all the things that I still have to do.
Right. Yeah. I can speak to that on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's different. You know, I don't work with my civilian job, I don't work with anybody else that is a reservist or a guardsman. So it's unique for that. If anybody ever has any military questions, they come straight to me. You know, and same side of the coin, my military job, I work vehicle maintenance. That's completely different than what I do in the civilian world. You know, there's no connect whatsoever.
Right.
So I don't want to say it's different because there's a lot of folks that work different jobs, but I feel like for me that's quite opposite ends of the spectrum, you know. But if anybody has any questions about engineering or math or science, you know, they know where to go to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I do have kind of an off-the-cuff question. How has COVID impacted your service schedule?
That's a good question. Let's see. So, it was about March last year. So a little over a year ago that it officially became a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So we had in-person drill in March, and then it's a pandemic. April was canceled altogether. May and June we had virtual drill, which was basically telework. We telecommuted. I mean, that's fine, you know, if what you do can be done virtually on a computer or something like that. I mean, vehicle maintenance, that's pretty doggone hard, you know.
Right.
So basically, I had my guys watch maintenance videos on YouTube. So it's not ideal.
Right.
July, we had a voluntary drill. We may have had half the people. I didn't show up. I had something else to do. So I don't really know how that went. August, we were back in person. Great, you know, you get to see all your folks again. You know, I'm a supervisor, so I got to see my little troops again. It's August, September, October, November, all in person.
Mm-hmm.
I know we were there in December too. That's right, because we had a Christmas party, right? Christmas, you know, what would you call it?
Holiday gathering.
Holiday gathering, yeah. I mean, I was there for the first hour. There were barely any people there. Then January, February were again virtual,
Mm.
and March we're back again. So we'll see how it goes from this point forward. Should be fine.
Sounds like it's been interesting.
It is interesting.
Mm.
Personally, for me, you know, most of what I do is on a computer, so I can do every drill virtual. But
Right.
you know, my guys can't.
Yeah.
They need that hands-on. They literally need the hands-on experience.
Right.
That hands-on training.
Yeah. Mm.
So I guess we were pretty lucky that it was really only 4 months
Yeah.
that they did virtual. So could have been a lot worse.
Could have. Was your education at LSU supported by the GI Bill? Can you explain how that works?
Sure. So like I mentioned, I went to LSU initially on an Air Force ROTC scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same as GI Bill. So I did those years, did my service. I left my active duty service to come back to finish my degree. I used my GI Bill to finish my degree. So there are multiple forms of the GI Bill. There's a Montgomery GI Bill, and then there's a post 9/11 GI Bill. At this point, I don't know who in their right mind would use the Montgomery GI Bill, because the post 9/11 GI Bill is so magnificent. You only need to serve, I think, 90 consecutive days in order to qualify for the post 9/11 GI Bill.
Oh, wow.
How long you serve determines what percentage of the GI Bill you get, though. So, like I mentioned, I did 2 years active duty.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 years got me 70% of the post 9/11 GI Bill. What that entails is 70% of tuition,
Mm-hmm.
70% fees, 70% book stipend,
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest, 70% of a monthly BAH, which is a basic allowance for housing.
Oh, wow.
So I got a housing allowance every month. That's determined by rank and location. So the GI Bill, the rank is E5 for everybody. Doesn't matter what you are, so everybody gets that same rank. Location is determined by zip code.
Okay.
So we live in Baton Rouge. We got the Baton Rouge BAH, which is actually pretty nice. I think at the time it didn't quite pay our rent, but it was pretty doggone close.
That's nice.
So I would recommend to anyone that serves to use that post 9/11 GI Bill.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, just today I was talking to my 17-year-old nephew,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much trying to convince him to join the service.
Yeah.
And I was pitching that GI Bill to him.
Nice. Speaking from experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think you've kind of touched on this already, but if you feel you need to further to differentiate, describe briefly how your current service differs from full-time service.
Okay, so I'm a reservist.
Mm-hmm.
We do 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing you see in all the commercials on TV.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it is. 2 days out of every month, and we do a 2-week annual tour, usually during the summer. That's all for training. So basically that comes out to be about 39 days out of the year. So that's 39 days that you have to train.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks is 15 days. We do 15 days of AT. So it's 39 days to do what active duty does in 365. Big difference.
Huge difference.
But active duty does have a lot of the better benefits. That's a big plus. big difference too is I feel, considering I've done both, so
You can speak
I
from
have the
experience.
experience. There's a lot of camaraderie on active duty. Like those guys you serve with, they're not just your coworkers. I mean, they're your brothers and sisters. That's your family.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the reserves, these are the guys you see once a month.
Part-time job.
Yeah. But I guess it depends. It depends on what your experience is. To me, I mean, they're not just my coworkers. When I go to drill and when I go to AT and on deployment and all that, I spend time with those guys. I want to spend time with them because they're my brothers and sisters in arms.
Yeah.
Not everybody's like that, probably because they don't have the same experiences, but that's how I feel. Whereas, on the flip side, on the civilian side, you don't get that same experience with the folks you work with.
Not at all.
Pre-COVID, we'd go out a couple times a year to the Bulldog and have a beer for some special occasion. It's the only time I'd see folks I work with outside of work.
Yeah.
Definitely not the same. But that was a little bit of a tangent because we were talking about reserve versus active duty. Active duty, those guys you work with every single day. Generally speaking, you're away from your home. So those people you work with are your family.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're invested and you commit, that literally is your family. Those are the people you see every day. Those are the people you hang out with outside of work. Those are people you drink with, party with, you go play sports with, you go out of town and vacation with. Those are your lifelong friends, basically. Whereas in the reserves, it depends.
Right.
Depends on who you are.
Yeah, and what you're investing in.
Exactly.
Is it also true, correct me if I'm wrong, that as a reservist you can be activated depending on an emergency?
No.
That's not true?
National Guard, yes.
Okay.
Reserves, no. And the big difference is National Guard, they're paid and they fall under the state's authority.
Okay.
Reserve, we are paid and we fall under federal, U.S. authority.
Okay.
So a governor can call the National Guard up to serve during a national disaster or something like that.
Okay.
We cannot. They'll ask us if we want to volunteer for something like that.
Okay.
But we can't be forced.
Big difference.
It is.
So you, I think, touched on this a little bit earlier. What challenges, if any, has the difference between your current service and full-time service previously or currently present in your professional life and your family life? And I guess to further put some parameters around that question, the reservist career that you now hold.
So that's where you're going with the question?
Yeah.
Reserve?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess I'm lucky with my civilian job. They let me, well, I mean, it's a law, so they can't say no, but
yeah,
they have no problems with me going and serving.
Mm-hmm.
They understand, they knew from the get-go that I do that. My particular job, I get 15 days of military leave a year, so that's very helpful. I have my work email on my phone, so I don't really miss a whole lot. So that's good for the job. I'm a dedicated state employee.
Yeah.
So I check my email constantly. And even while I was deployed, I was gone pretty much 7 months. If I got an email that required attention, I forwarded it to the correct person. So they're lucky to have me, I guess. As far as the reserve goes, I mean, I've touched on that already. You know, being gone one weekend out of every month could be hard for the family. At least they know when that's going to be. So generally, we can plan around it. So I through what's this 2021? So I've been in the reserves for about 11 and a half years. I've missed birthdays and stuff like that, but as far as regular drill and stuff, I hadn't really missed any major life events. And even so, if something really big came up, I could always reschedule, or I can be excused from a drill weekend.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of compromise between both.
Yeah. You've been there for the birth of both your children.
Mm-hmm.
So
and both of them, I'm pretty sure I had to either be excused or reschedule a drill weekend.
Right. So it hasn't gotten in the way of something so important that it was life altering as far as family goes.
There's understanding there,
Right.
And I guess it depends on who's in charge, who's making those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one's the same. There are some people that are really, really hard on that kind of stuff. I guess I've been lucky in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when Elizabeth was born, I did have to reschedule as opposed to being excused. So, well, the reason was, well, you're too important. I need you here.
Interesting.
Can't argue with that though.
Yeah.
Important guy.
So, allow me to preface this next question with a statement. I can appreciate that this is a very personal question, but as a nurse, I think it concerns a topic that often goes unaddressed. When it does come up, too often many don't know how to answer because of social stigma, especially veterans. What challenges has service presented to your mental and emotional health? And how do you keep yourself healthy in those aspects?
I'd imagine that particular question would be more important to active duty service. More specifically, probably like Army or Marine Corps or something like that. Those types of folks that see combat, basically. Personally, I feel like I'm pretty mentally strong, emotionally, specifically. I mean, I'm close to my wife and my friends. I talk to them all the time, and even when I was overseas, we continue to text, did we not? So
Yeah.
that's a good outlet, But again, personally, I haven't seen combat. I'll never see combat, so I can't really relate to that kind of situation. I know, let me say this, I feel that the question is probably more geared towards like PTSD and that kind of thing. 22 veterans a day commit suicide, so mental health is a big deal. Every year we're required to do a mental health assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's always the same questions, but I can answer honestly and say, I don't have those problems. I don't gamble. I don't feel I drink too much. I don't take pills or anything like that. I have good relationships with the people I love and work with and all that. So I can't really relate to someone that would really have to look at that question and look inside themselves and have to struggle to answer, if you know what I mean.
That makes sense. I'm glad you're not in that place.
I'm glad to.
What's your current plan for the remainder of your military career?
So it's April 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Should be eligible to retire September 2027, and that is the plan.
Wow, so that's how many more years?
About 6.5 years, give or take.
Wow. That's
So,
not far.
It 6 years seems like a long time.
Yeah.
But as a reservist, those years actually go by really fast. It's like, dude, I haven't seen you in a month. Not really, but that time goes by really fast. Assuming I don't have another deployment popping up, I wouldn't think so, but you never know.
Never know.
Our block is coming up next year. Actually, to be honest, the only reason I deployed last time was because we didn't have anybody to fill it. Mm-hmm. As long as we have enough people,
you should be
I'll
good to go.
I'll never deploy again. And actually, if I finally get promoted, I know I'll never deploy because they're not going to ask a reservist to fill a senior master sergeant slot.
There you go.
But that's the plan. As soon as September 2027 comes around, I'm done. I'm tired. Even though it's only 1 weekend a month, I feel like at this point that's a weekend that is valued.
Yeah. I mean, you work
too much crap to do.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you'll still be working your civilian job.
Oh shit! I'll be doing that until when did I start? 2011. So I'll be doing that for a long time. I got about 24 more years of that.
Yeah. Are you a member of a veterans organization?
I am not, unfortunately.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of them out there, but unfortunately, I haven't joined any.
Are you eligible to join any?
Well, I am technically a veteran, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I figured.
Like I said, there's a lot,
Yeah.
VFW and all that.
Yeah.
So,
and
I guess the pins.
What's the one that we would go to for silver?
Oh, AFA?
Yeah, AFA.
Well, anybody that served in the Air Force can join that.
That's what I thought.
So I could. Oh, I actually thought about that recently.
Well, that's the one that I figured
but
you would be in.
Sometimes some of those organizations, I feel like you pay money for dues, but you don't get anything out of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that I want to come off as selfish, but I want to
get your money's worth.
Feel that I'm doing something or getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Like if there was a VFW near here, maybe I'd look into joining that.
Mm-hmm. Has your military experience influenced your thoughts about the military or war in general?
No, for war, considering that I haven't seen combat and I probably never will. So my thoughts and feelings on that, I don't think will change. In the military, yes, actually, because back in the day, serving on active duty, active duty folks talk down on reservists and guardsmen. That's that's just the way it is. But being a reservist, it opens your eyes. And honestly, the folks on active duty that I've talked to and I've explained how it is, they're like, wow, I hadn't really thought about that. That really changes my way of thinking.
It sounds like you've made a difference to some people's opinions.
Some people, yeah. Well, I mean, especially over a deployment,
Mm-hmm.
Because you get a mix.
Mm-hmm.
You get active duty, you get guard, and you get reserves that deploy. In some cases, you can see which is which. But then at the same time, some cases, you would think otherwise. Because you get really awesome guys that are reserves or guard, and you get pretty dirtbag airmen that are active duty, so it's a mix. So it depends, you know.
You just have to fill them out.
I think I did a pretty good job when I deployed. Leaving, I had some active duty technical sergeants shake my hand and say thank you, and this one guy that really sticks out in my mind. And it kind of blew me back because I didn't think I really did too much for him. He's like, thank you. And he's like, really, thank you. You helped out a lot. I appreciate that. You know, I feel like I did the best I could, and yeah, that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Because that proves it.
Yeah. Good. How have your service and the associated experiences with that affected your life? I know that's a pretty broad question. But...
It is. Well, I'm 36 years old. I've been wearing a uniform since I was 15, starting at junior ROTC. That's most of my life.
Yeah. And
I'm very passionate about the Air Force and the military in general, in my country. You know, I'm a patriot. That's why I serve, because I love my country. That's what I want to do. Really, service just strengthens that, you know. I feel proud that I was able to deploy. I know if I was active duty this long, I would have deployed probably at least 4 times now.
Yeah.
But being a reservist, I'm glad that I've gotten that opportunity. It's different with the family because it's something that I wouldn't volunteer for, but I'm glad it came around. If I was single, I'd volunteer for everything, I think, because this is what I want to serve my country. If things would have been different, I would have served a career out of the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
I would have commissioned, and I'd be flying planes right now, you know?
Yeah.
But God had other plans, so this is where I'm at. But I'll do my part, and I'll do it the best I can, you know? But I'll continue to wear my uniform proudly and serve my country the best I can. At the same time, being the best father and husband I can, and being the best engineer I can, and serving my state of Louisiana.
It's a great answer. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
I think we've covered everything that we can.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of highlighting your career and your journey.
I think so.
Brian, thank you for sharing your precious time, experiences, and memories with me today. I value your continuing sacrifices. Thank you again. Please note that parts of the majority of the questions contained within this interview were adapted from questions developed by the Veterans History Project team, working in consultation with the American Folklife Center and the Oral History Association. Special acknowledgement is extended to Donald A. Ritchie, Associate Historian, United States Senate, and author of Doing Oral History, New York, Twain Publishers, 1995.